Hey everybody, Tim here with today's episode of Stranger Things, Season 2, Episode 3, the Pollywog, which sounds like a Pokemon, but whatever. Overall, I'd say this is a good episode. I still don't feel like the show is as good as Season 1, but I do feel like all 3 episodes that I've seen of Season 2 so far have gotten better and better. So this one is a direct connection to the last episode where it starts out with Dustin getting home for trick-or-treating, and then we know he found something in the garbage can, but we don't know what it is yet. And I kind of loved that scene. It was a great opening scene where he's like still dressed as the Ghostbuster, and he goes inside, and then it starts moving, and his mom screams, and he's like, "Oh, I put a motor in it because to make it more lifelike." And then there's just the awkward laugh. It was a kind of a fun scene. I really liked it. As soon as he opens it and you see what it looks like, the first thing I thought of was the leech-looking thing that Will throws up in the final episode of Season 1. And sure enough, later on, when we get to that point in this episode, we actually see a flashback of that. He names him D'Artagnan, which is a reference to the Three Musketeers, Yeah. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, for me, like, I've seen all the movies and all sorts of stuff. This show takes place in, like, 1984, so it's kind of interesting. Evidently, Dustin likes to read, which makes sense, because we see him in the library, and he tries to check out 5 books, and the librarian's like, "You've already checked out 5 books. You can't have 10 of them." And then he just runs away with them anyway. We see some more of the Hopper-Eleven relationship, and we see a lot more of like when Hopper first finds Eleven, which bothered me a little bit. Although I do love, so she's mad at him because he missed Halloween, and he's like, "Oh, you're still not talking to me? Well, you're going to miss out on the triple-decker Eggo Extreme." And they're sitting there eating it, and he's like, "You know what's great about this is it's 8,000 calories." And I don't know, something like that made me laugh, but whatever. What bothers me about it is we see some of the flashback where Hopper was leaving the food for her in the box. Like, it was a good bait at the end of the first season, but it doesn't work in Season 2. Like, I didn't know if he was, like, putting the food in the box and then it was going to the Upside Down where she still was. But now we know that she was just roaming around the woods and just taking food from this box. And it's just kind of weird to me. And when Hopper finally does find her, she's actually starting to grow her hair. So she's been in the woods for months, like eating squirrels and stuff. Like, it's just really weird to me. And then we kind of see the tripwire scene and stuff like that, which you know is going to come back. It's one of those, like, what is it? Whatever his name is, gun thing. Whatever. It's foreshadow. And I don't know. I'm not digging it, but I'm sure it'll be important later on. Some great scenes with Bob. At this point, I feel like they haven't really done a lot with Sean Astin. He plays the goofy, kind of lovable stepdad character, but they're not doing anything. And this is probably the first major scene we see of him where he's talking about Mr. Baldo. And he does a great thing. It's a great reference to It, where he even talks about how he grew up in Maine, where It takes place, and how he found a clown trying to give him a balloon. And he even does a pretty bitchin', like, clown voice, where he's like, "Do you want a balloon?" And I don't know, I thought it was actually really good. At this point, I don't know if Finn Wolfhard had been cast as Richie yet, so I don't know how coincidental it is that they were making this It reference while the guy that plays Mike is in the It movie. So I think I like that going on. We see Steve and Billy have their first scene where they're slowly bringing Billy more into the cast, and he just plays a dick. Steve and Nancy, that love triangle, is starting to break down a little bit more, where she was drunk and saying how their relationship is bullshit and she doesn't really love him. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that. I like the scene. It's a great scene where Dustin finally introduces Dart to all of the rest of the gang, and they freak out, and Mike's first reaction is to hit it with a hammer. So I kind of like that, and it's kind of making Dustin a little bit of an outcast of the group for this season. And I think that's really interesting, because the first season, Will is hardly in it, whereas in this one, Dustin is kind of now that outcast, and Mike is kind of the outcast of the first season. Everybody wants to go to the adults. Mike wants to keep 11 a secret, but they kind of still go with his ideas. Hopper goes to Dr. Owens because he realizes, like, the pumpkins dying is basically all streaming from the plant. And once again, like, we haven't really seen Dr. Owens do anything like villainous, but like, he doesn't care about the pumpkins. He's like, okay, so what? Like, everybody's dying. Oh well. So clearly he's going to be more and more of a villain as we go through. I loved the scene where Joyce is trying to watch the VHS tape. I was not alive in 1984, much less knowing about the technology, but her trying to hook up the camcorder to the TV and Bob working at Radio Shack trying to explain it to her was great, because I couldn't tell you the difference between a VHS and a VHC. Like, I was like, I don't know what's going on either. So I kind of liked that. But it was a pretty intense scene where, like, she pauses it just right, and you start to kind of see that, like, not necessarily photo negative, but the static of the monster in the background, and she compares it to Will's drawing. So she knows that there's more going on than meets the eye. So that's some great foreshadow coming up. We start getting more insight on Dart because the kids start brainstorming. Like I said, we see that flashback of Will throwing up a leech. So instantly, like, I don't know, like, if everybody got this, but as soon as you see it, you're like, that's going to be a baby Demogorgon. Like, just watch. And sure enough, like, its legs start sprouting out. And they kind of bring up the point, like, oh, just because it's from the upside down, that means it's evil? And Mike is like, yeah, it is. That makes sense. Just like everybody that was in the Death Star is evil. And it was almost like a Clerks reference where he's like, oh no, they were independent contractors. Like, that doesn't mean anything. But we start seeing Dart grow legs and start running around and escaping. Mike and Max have an interesting scene where, like, she's trying to get in on their party, but he doesn't want her in there. Like, he doesn't know her, so why should she be involved? And he just flies down this list. I had to watch it twice, and I don't play D&D. I've never done it. I've wanted to, but I've never actually done it. So I actually had to kind of look up some of the names, where, like, Mike is the paladin, aka the knight. Will is the cleric, aka the religious leader. Will. Dustin was the bard, the poet. Lucas is the ranger, the hunter tracker, and 11 is the mage, aka the magician. And you can kind of see how all of them fit. Like, Mike is the leader, so of course he'd be the paladin. Will, I don't quite get as the religious leader, but whatever. Dustin is the one who reads a lot, and he's kind of the nerdy, and he's really the smart one, so he's being the poet. Lucas, as I said a lot in the first season, he's the voice of reason. He's the one that's like, let's just go get an adult. Let's do this the smart way. So he'd be the tracker, and then 11 can move shit with her mind, so of course she's the magician. I loved the scene where she's trying to, like, she's not necessarily flirting with Mike, but she's trying to impress him. And 11's not having it, and she shoves her off of the skateboard with her mind. And Mike knows. Like, granted, she runs away before Mike can see her, but Mike knows that 11 did that, and so there's some more foreshadow coming up. Of course, Will is the one that finds Dart and then instantly goes to the upside down. Like, he has one of his episodes and flashes out there. And, of course, Dustin hides him under the hat. So it's like, okay, Dustin, like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be the smart one of the group. Like, you figured out the compass last season. Like, what are you doing trying to keep this animal a secret? I feel like it's literally and figuratively going to bite him in the ass. Finally, we start getting some more of that opposing viewpoints where he starts flashing back to Bob's advice, where Bob told him the story about Mr. Baldo and how he kept having the dreams about him. And finally, he told Mr. Baldo, no, go away. And Mike listens to him. Like, okay, Mike, like, what are you thinking? Like, I just don't get it. Like, it baffled me, because if you're having a scary dream of a clown, okay, fine. Try to grab your courage, try to stand up and tell the scary clown no. If you are in another dimension and you see a monster the size of a city, fucking run. Like, what are you doing? You don't say no. You just get out of there. So that really bothered me, that he actually did listen to Bob's voice or advice. But again, he's like a 12-year-old kid, so I guess that would make sense. I don't know why, but once again, I kind of got that Ghostbusters theme where it's like, if somebody asked if you were a god, you say yes. Like, if a giant monster's chasing you, just run away, because this isn't a dream, and it's not Tim Curry in a clown outfit. Go away. So overall, I would say it was a good episode. It's a fun episode, but I still feel like they're just building up. Like, we haven't quite got to that like plateau where things are spreading out and starting to make sense. We're just asking questions without getting any answers. So for those who have seen this one, go ahead, let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for everything, and I will see you guys next time for Will the Wise.